Welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast, a show that celebrates all things nerdy. You'll get an insider's look into the world of comic books, graphic novels, TV and film, gaming and pop culture, as well as the technologies that drive all of it. Now, are you ready to get nerdy? Welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast, the show about all things nerdy. It's a show about nerd news, movies, TV shows, games, comics, and so much more. I'm Brian.
Chad.
I'm Damien.
I hate you both. And brace yourselves, folks, because we're about to get nerdy. Before we jump into our very unfortunate topic tonight, I just want to give a huge shout out to the whole reason that we're here, and that is the Rising Tide Broadcast Network. Folks,
you can't see my hands.
No, you can't, but we see your spirit hands. You're there in spirit, Jeremy. And guys, this network is a great community to be a part of. Rising Tide is all about just building each other up as we all rise together. And all these shows will help you do that. There's shows to help you unwind. Ted Davies and Chris Davies are awesome at mixing some drinks on Friday nights. Brian K. Morris tomorrow morning will be leading the pack with Nevermind the Furthermore, getting you early in the morning with good conversation and a cup of coffee. There's shows about comic books. There's shows about inspiration. There's shows about pretty much anything you would ever want in life, really. You will find the answers at the Rising Tide Broadcast Network. So tune in to all the shows you find here and consider being a part of this wonderful community. And now, so this week we were supposed to have an actual guest on.
A real guest.
And instead they
One
had
with legitimate
scheduling
credentials.
Yeah. A scheduling conflict
Good one,
because Chad was in charge of scheduling this guest.
Yeah, so it's perfect.
Surprise.
Yeah.
So and then we end up replacing the guest with Chad. I feel like there's a conspiracy happening here.
Absolutely.
I feel like something
He killed the other guy.
Yeah, I think he's dead somewhere, and Chad's like, now I'm the guest. Yeah. So
my show.
Gross. So tonight, yes, it is true. The rumors are true. We are putting a spotlight on Chad Nuss because he has just been shipping out his new issue of The Silence, which is his sci-fi comic book. And we're going to dive deep into that tonight. We're going to dive deep into the worldview of the book, which is also a reflection of the worldview of Chad. And we're going to be diving into Chad's creative process because Chad fell on the sword last week. We did a 2-part episode we just did the one part episode of character building. But we didn't get to Chad so that we could get to the rest of us because he gives so much.
Or something
like
so
that.
So much love already.
And so tonight we're giving him the spotlight. We're going to do that throughout the rest of the season. We'll be spotlighting all the dingoes and others as well.
Thank you.
So stay
I
tuned.
was actually just about to interrupt you and say, in my defense, this is not all about me because we are going to do it about you guys too. So
we are.
And we are looking forward to that.
Allegedly.
I'm going to say, right. Yeah, we'll see if that actually happens. No, I'm going to give you a lot of compliments tonight, Chad. So I'm trying to just give you all the roasting up front so that people actually know where we stand.
Nice. I like this.
So, but before we do that, before we jump into our icebreaker, let's jump into the comments section. And Chad already has his paid cheerleading section.
Yes.
From Ted Davies. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Thank you, Ted.
Ted, hello.
I love you, Ted.
Donna, how you doing? Carl saying hi. Carl says, I'm going to have to leave a little before 8 for Grant Lankard's Kickstarter. That's right, everybody. That is a great reason to leave the show. At 8 o'clock, Grant Lankard is having a live event. He's launching his Kickstarter. for Beowulf issue 3. Issues 1 and 2 were both great. I really loved them. So definitely go check that out at 8 o'clock for sure. And you can come back. We'll probably still be here running live anyway. And if you miss it, catch us on the rerun. Give us a smooch in the comments section. And Donna says, since it's for Grant, then it's all right. We'll pardon you this time, Carl. Ted's saying, hey kids, how you doing, Dad? How's it going, buddy?
Hi.
Everybody's saying hello to each other. And sup, Chad, from John Renner.
John Renner, and this may come up at some point. We are starting a business together, and so he's part of the NFT thing that I had mentioned to you.
Gotcha. Well,
you know, in personal conversation. So
yeah, John Renner, my condolences, sir. And Ted Davies says it's a conflict of Chad interest. Oh, gross. Carl says putting on my like now. Thank you very much, everybody. If you're here and you're watching, click that like button. Click that bell as well, so you'll be notified whenever we launch new episodes. Just smash it to death. And that's all the comments for now. So let's jump in to our wonderful icebreaker. Cartoons are very important. I am a huge advocate for animation for all ages, and animation overall, I think, has inspired the last two generations, Gen X and millennials, and Gen Z, of course. But in my peer group, I'm seeing that a lot of people name animators as their inspirations and specific shows. So, as creators, as content creators, what cartoons, what specific cartoon really grabbed you as a kid that inspired you to then create? Jeremy, why don't you lead us off?
I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think it was such a craze, you know, like, maybe that's a cop out to say that.
No, not at all.
Because like every kid had Ninja Turtles, but yeah, I was just infatuated with it. I had the like above ground and below ground like scene that
the play sets. Yeah.
And the van and all that. I remember.
Yeah, I had the big Technodrome too. Did you have
really?
that? Yeah, with the eyeball on top. I got that. I was a sickly child, so my parents spoiled me with toys.
I remember actually like sneaking and looking at presents.
Yeah,
when I was a kid. Well, and I got in like really big trouble for it. But it was I found that. I found the van with the pizzas that would shoot out and stuff, and like, and then I opened it. You know what I mean? Like it was already wrapped, and I
opened it before Christmas.
Yeah,
you just
I don't know I was.
What are you thinking?
Like a 5-year-old.
Oh gosh,
a 6-year-old.
You're like no one will notice.
Yeah,
no one will know.
And I'm playing with it, and all of a sudden I'm like, the realization, like, it's December 15th. What are we gonna do for the next couple of weeks?
Did you rewrap it? Did you try?
No. I shoved it in the closet and put other boxes around it. Again, I'm an idiot, right?
That's okay.
They'll never find out.
Yeah. I don't know why that is stuck in my brain, but yeah, that feeling of funny. Oh God, what have I done?
That overwhelming sense of dread.
Yeah.
No, I actually agree. TMNT, for anybody that knows me, I mean, is the toys alone was a huge inspiration for the look and the design of the nebulizer. I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original movie, the first two movies specifically, and then the original cartoon series was just pivotal. And great documentary for those who haven't seen it. Jeremy, I don't know if you've seen this. Turtle Power is on, I believe it's on Amazon Prime now, and it is a documentary about how the comic book took off and became the cartoon series. So the primary two, like, it's a behind the scene, in depth. It's like 2 hours long, in depth documentary about the comic, the early days, and then specifically the movies and cartoon show.
Oh, that's cool.
Of turtles and how it all kind of fits together. It's a great documentary. Again, it's called Turtle Power for those that want to catch it. Chad, what about you?
Yeah, so when I saw this question, I was thinking about shows that I watched when I was a kid. So I loved.
Did they have cartoons back then?
Yeah, I'm amazed. Wow, were they even in color?
It was the one where the frames of the horse go by really quickly, and it's just galloping by.
Right,
yeah. There was a really cartoon I loved. It was called "I Hate You." But
I know that
one. My favorite. That was my favorite cartoon.
Just kidding. No, so I loved He-Man. I love G.I. Joe. I think though, if I were to look back at one that I still love to this day, that I'll still watch, is not really necessarily like a Saturday morning cartoon, but Sword in the Stone from Disney is one of my favorite movies of all time. I know it's not one of the more popular ones, like an Aladdin or something like that, but there's just something about the look of that movie, as well as Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty is one of the most beautiful animations ever made.
Did you have the VHS that had the special features at the end of it?
I had the VHS. I don't remember if it had the special features though.
Well, it showed behind the scenes, like the paintings that inspired.
Yes, now that you said that, yes, now I do remember, because I remember it showing I forget what it's not a machine, but it's like
the different layers of all the paintings,
and how they did it. Yeah, I do remember seeing that. Yeah, it's incredible.
It's wild.
Incredible movie.
Just creating that depth. And seeing the camera shoot down through all of those.
That's the thing.
Wild.
Like 2D animation is a beautiful art form. It's expensive, traditionally done.
So much harder.
Yeah, it is and that's why it's so much easier to do, a CG type cartoon. But man, cartoons, it's starting to come back. Don Bluth Studios is starting to release some stuff here soon. And he obviously did a bunch of movies in the 80s and 90s. And the last traditional Cuphead, the video game, is going to be a show on Netflix. It is traditionally drawn, and it's 2D, just like the video game is. But also a great Christmas movie called Klaus.
I was gonna mention that. Yeah.
So beautifully done. The story is phenomenal. The story rivals anything Disney's put out. And the performance, the voice acting, there's great, but the artwork, knowing that it was traditional 2D with obviously done on drawing tablets and things like that, but it's none of it is any kind of CG work. It's all traditional animation done through digital means. And I absolutely love that. So let's jump into the to the comment section again. Oh goodness. Hey Ted. Here we go. All right, yeah. So He-Man, absolutely, John Renner.
But you started to say that before I jumped in and mocked your age, right? I think you mentioned He-Man.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Chad, did you watch the new He-Man?
I have not yet.
He-Man. So there's the Kevin Smith version, and then there's the new kids version, both on Netflix.
No, I've not seen it yet.
No. The Kevin, I've only watched the first season of the Kevin Smith version, which I personally really liked. I know a lot of people threw some shade at it for just some creative differences, but I thought it was great. And I've also heard that a lot of those people are much more satisfied with season 2. Which is essentially the other half of season 1. I don't know why we're splitting up first seasons and calling it 2 different ones, but anyway,
let me say one thing real quick. No. So John has a comment up here. It says, "Wow, special feelings." And,
sorry, I missed that one.
That's all right. I think what he's referring to is when I said, "Hey, I know John. We're starting a business together." It was very formal. He is a friend of mine. We've known each other for years. So I apologize about it being so
John,
formal business-like. So.
If you don't, knowing Chad for years, then you also know that he is a sociopath and really has no human feelings whatsoever. So it's no surprise that he just responded to you as a robot, which is what he actually is.
He is a man that I have seen.
Hello, fellow humans. How are you today?
I'm definitely the Michael Scott of the show sometimes. I'll say some crazy.
You're more like a Dwight.
No.
Just that robotic, no feelings. No. Ted Davies says Voltron and Thundercats.
Yeah,
Excellent
Voltron
choice.
is awesome.
Yes, I loved Thundercats. I liked the remake of Thundercats too. I was sad that they didn't do more than one season. Carl Witzman says, I seem to recall TMNT coming out when I was already an adult. That's okay. You can watch cartoons when you're an adult. I do. Eric Hawkins is throwing down a gauntlet saying, okay, since you all are TMNT fans, what color are the masks? Well, it depends.
I could name the mask, and I'm not a TMNT fan. This isn't a challenging question. I can.
Do it.
Leonardo.
Do it.
Leonardo was blue.
Yeah.
Michelangelo was orange.
Yeah.
Raphael was purple.
Yeah.
And Donatello. Oh, dang. No, I can't.
Yeah, you're wrong.
I can't.
You're wrong. So here's the thing.
Donatello was purple, wasn't he?
Yes, but you're wrong on all of them.
Raphael was red.
They were all red.
On the show.
Were they?
No,
on the show.
Actually, technically in the comics. In the covers of the comics, they were all red masks. In the comics, they were black and white, so there were no colors. They were told apart by the weapons and the personalities. When they went into the cartoons, they realized that it would be very confusing for kids if they all looked the same and they all had the same color mask. So that's when they divvied up the different colors.
Yeah, but still, they even did that very terribly. I've watched some reviews of that. No, the different because they're using essentially the same movements and just duplicating it. It's
that was
half the times they have all orange masks and they're just all standing in the same frame, and you know what I mean.
Half of that was the rush of the animation, right. the lack of
it was still
time.
Fun.
Oh yeah, it was still
that's
great.
What I thought Eric was talking about was
yeah. So, but yeah, it depends on when we're talking about the turtles, because John Renner then says, I can twirl a mean staff, nunchucks, not so much. I was dangerous with nunchucks. RIP my tube TV. Carl Witzman says, the Jetsons. Yes, I love the Jetsons. They were great. See, I was introduced to the Jetsons because of Cartoon Network, because back in the day, Hanna-Barbera was all over Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
They had Tom and Jerry, they had all the Looney Tunes, they had the Flintstones, Jetsons, Johnny Quest, all of that. Yogi Bear, they had all that stuff, and that's how I got introduced to all those cartoons. So I love them; they're great. John Winter says, "Oh yeah, love that film. Sword in the Stone is one of his favorites. He's now laughing at you, as he should." And straight up narcissist. John, we're friends. You're already my friend. Yes. Fraggle Rock, not a cartoon, but still amazing.
Still amazing.
I love that show.
Inspiring tons of children to eat things that they shouldn't.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Eric. Red, and red. And I get the gold star because I'm better than Chad. Braxton Gaither says my dad has some art in the original TMNT comics. That's cool, man. I did not know that. That is pretty cool. That is a fun fact. Well, you'll have to tell me. I have a lot of the original comics, so you should tell me which ones. John Renner says, "Oh man, Hanna-Barbera, Griffin King's Island." Yes, King's Island in the 80s. Actually, in the 90s, too. King's Island was Hanna-Barbera land in King's Island. Don't you remember that? This was back when it was Paramount's King's Island, before, what was it? Whoever bought them out. Cedar Point, was that it? Something like that?
I've been to King's Island twice.
Oh, man. We would go to King's Island at least once a year when I was growing up. And we would always hit, the Hanna-Barbera land. And it all had the same rides pretty much. They were all just named after movies. Mm-hmm. So the Top Gun ride is actually
that was awesome.
The line was better than the ride was,
because I love that ride.
Like you went through like a aircraft carrier in the line.
Yeah.
And like the line was awesome. The ride sucked though. Like the actual roller coaster was like wee and you're done. The line was cooler. So
I think you guys should fight.
I'm
ready.
Should. My lungs are ready too. So okay. Yeah. Come here, Chad. I got a solid 10 seconds on you, and then I'm just dead. So but aren't you like a black belt or something stupid like that?
No.
I thought you knew karate.
No, I took Muay Thai for like
that's what it was.
Like almost a year, and then COVID hit and the gym shut down. So now I jump rope. So
okay. Like Rocky style, like really fast.
Yeah.
Do you just cut the middle of it and you just look like you're doing
yeah.
It, right?
I just use my hands in the air.
Right. Yeah. You don't even have a rope. You just
I don't need a rope.
It's like never land. Like never food from Hook. It's just never jump rope. All right. So first, before we jump into more of the worldview stuff, more of the deep inner workings of Chad's mind, I did want to get to the questions that that you asked all of us last week, Chad. I kind of want to ask your questions for your character building and just kind of how you approach your comics creatively. So the first one is, who is your favorite? Actually, before we start that, Chad, why don't you just give us a little pitch and tell us what the silence is for those who don't know?
Okay.
I'm gonna even give you a full screen for this.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Nice and close. So so I put this in the very back, when someone asks me for like my elevator pitch, basically I just tell them that the silence is about two flawed characters or heroes who are trying to find the meaning of life. And I know that sounds heavy and deep and those kind of things, but that really is what's driving this whole thing. And so it's a sci-fi adventure story. The two main characters are Naomi and Lazarus, and they're on a journey to answer some questions about life. And they meet up with some other, obviously, major characters throughout the story. But that's the main thing, is that they're trying to find the meaning of life in a sci-fi format.
Look at that beautiful wall of humility behind you.
Shut up.
That is amazing. No, that's great. And I will. Okay, so gross. I feel disgusted. I'm gonna take a shower after this episode. So, I have to say, guys, first of all, I want to show off a thing that most people don't have. I have the original floppy of the first issue.
Yeah.
And I read through this again. I have the hardback as well, but I read through this again last night when I read the second issue. Because I wanted the full experience, and I will actually, if you haven't read it yet, and you bought it, which what we will do in the show notes below, we'll attach a link to Chad's website where you can pick this up and get the first one as well. Did you already get it, Jeremy?
No,
there it is. Oh, I see. Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and put that.
The website is right.
Yes.
Yes.
So we are going to put that in the comments
Hi, Robin.
there in the comments. She said she hates you. So we put that in the comments right there, so you can check that out. And the best, in my opinion, the best way to read this is read it starting at issue 1, read through it, and then immediately go into issue 2. And I chose an amazing soundtrack to read this to, and that is Blade Runner 2049, because it just fits the tone of this book perfectly. So Chad, all I have to say is, whoever you have tied up in your basement writing this for you, they did such a good job, because there's no way it came from you. But I do have to say, in all seriousness, guys, I know I give Chad a lot of crap, and I absolutely enjoy doing that. Chad is one of my closest friends, and I don't say what I'm about to say because of that. I say, I would love to take any shots at Chad that I absolutely could. And I have to say that this book, it's only 2 issues in, and it is the most intellectually stunning indie comic I've ever read. And I mean that. I absolutely mean that. It is fantastic, and you want to pick this up. It is a lot to ingest, but in the best way. Like it's like sitting down to a 4-course meal when you read this. So gosh, I feel so disgusting now. But that is no, else it's great, guys. It's great. So before we start drooling over Chad, who is your favorite character from the Silence that you like to write?
I would definitely say Dr. Polaris, and I know we'll talk about him a little bit later, but to save that for later, my second choice would be really the narrative. I know that's not really a character, but when you're reading through like the first section of this, not the first section, there's in issue 2, the very first intro section, there's a narrative part, and then the part that gets into the actual story, there is a narrative, and you'll see like on here, or this side, you see the actual page, like the drawing, and then the narrative is on this side. And then the narrative is on this side. This is actually written by one of the characters, or it's written by me, but it's of one of the characters speaking. And I love that part of the writing process of like filling in all the background details. And with that too, you don't know exactly who the character is that's talking. So I love that kind of mysterious element to it. And for me, that kind of writing just really brings a bit of depth to the book, instead of it just being like, here's the narrator and he's saying blah, 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 or whatever, Is
there ever a plan to reveal who the narrator is?
I don't think so. I think you can, if you think about it enough, you can kind of figure out who it is. And as the story goes along.
So you do know.
Yeah, I know exactly who it is. Yeah.
Okay.
So the narrator is an actual like character. It's not just like some invisible storyteller.
Yeah, and I mean, as the story unfolds, and even in this issue too, if you really think about who the characters are and everything like that, you can kind of put the pieces together as far as who it is. But yeah, I really enjoy writing that part of the story. Yeah, and I think the other characters like Naomi and Lazarus, they'll just get more and more interesting as it goes along, because you really don't know what their relationship is right now. And as it goes along, they could be brother and sister, they could be friends, they could be married. You have no idea. And so as that goes on, that'll become very interesting as well. So
okay,
I'm definitely looking forward to that. So.
Great.
Yeah.
So really quick, Robin was not ignoring you, Jeremy. She said hello, and that she's just letting Luna in here because Luna was sad. Luna's still a little sad because she's still stuck in a room. But
yeah, I could hear like
yeah. She was. You could hear her lament the songs of her people. So yes, poor sad Luna. Luna, baby. Oh, she's just staring at the door. Come here, baby. Come here. Let's. Oh, come on. You want? Yeah. She wants nothing to do with this process right now.
Turn it off.
She's like, stop it and love me. So let's jump back into let's jump at. Hold on, I'm sorry. What? She's fine. Yeah. So Eric says double Dutch.
Double Dutch. Yeah.
Talking about your invisible jump roping. And Glenn B. Fleming, all the way from across the pond, says, "Hey Brian, just in time to go to bed. I'll see you on the catch up tomorrow." Well, future Glenn, it's good to see you again. And Braxton says full screen glory or something like that. It was Chad, so I don't know if it's glory. Donna says hi and good night, Glenn.
Bye, Glenn.
Yes, Jenner. That John Renner. Jenner, huh? I just combined your name. Congratulations. Yes, we call that the wall of humility, because Clearly, that's what it is. And right here, yeah, exactly. Right here, folks, thesilencecomics.com is
Mine
where you
says,
can go.
I own a guitar. That's it.
Right. Yes. Mine
That's all
says
you need to know about me.
I'm just a hodgepodge of a huge nerd. Movies and comics and stuff. Braxton says, I saw it somewhere. I don't remember exactly where, but I'll get it now, knowing I know by association who made the comic. So, well, there you go. Awesome.
There it is.
So when am I going to be able to make a variant cover?
Ooh, that's very interesting.
I like this. I like this a lot. Braxton Gaither is the variant artist for the upcoming issue of Memoirs of an Angel, issue 8.
Oh, very nice.
Did a fantastic job with the cover. I'm excited to ship all that to you all next month. Molly Daniels says, Donna, yes. And hello, Molly. It is awesome to see you. Donna says, well, Molly, why not? I'm not sure what's happening. And Carl says, poor sad Luna. Yes, she is sad. Now she's a little happier. She's playing with where'd you get a straw? I don't know. And Donna says, Luna, Aunt Donna sends kisses and boops. And Molly says, exactly. Miss Yogi and Boo Boo and Snagglepuss. Yes. Great characters. And yes, Carl, Luna does have a fan club for sure. Kings Island isn't the same anymore. It's really not. It's not. It's still fun, but it's not the same without the characters and the movie themes, I think. Braxton says, I just got the first and second comic. Shoot me a message. Or IU, whatever works, and let's make up an exchange and exchange the goods. There you go. That sounds a little
business deal. I like it.
Indeed, I like it. There we go. So next question for you, Chad. What approach do you take to inventing and writing a character?
Yeah, so it's really dependent upon the bigger worldview, and this kind of goes into your next question about worldview, because that will really determine the personality and the history of the character. So, for example, Naomi and Lazarus in the next issue are going to be going off planet, and they will go to the planet Dan. That's not really a spoiler. I'll just let you know that right now.
Yeah.
And on Dan, there's a character called the Caterpillar King. And the Caterpillar King, there's a actual sketch of him in the back of I think in issue 2 in the sketch section. And so I haven't written that character yet, but when I go to write him, it will be I'll go into what is the worldview of that planet and what is the history of that society to let me then determine his personality, how he got into power, what just the little details of who he is. Yeah, that guy right there. Yeah. Yeah, that guy right there. So.
The Caterpillar King. I like it. Absolutely nothing like Alice in Wonderland. Does he smoke a hookah?
I should make him do that.
Yeah. So okay, going into worldview then, what role does worldview play in developing a new character?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything. I mean, it's very much like in real life, who you are, your personality is very much determined, and your belief structure is determined by your worldview. So, you could go back to your family, and that has a lot to do with your personality as well. And obviously there's more biological factors and all those kind of things, but worldview really shapes how a person thinks. And so when you're writing a character and expressing who that character is, you're getting into the way they think, how they view the world, how they interact with other characters. And that's all going to be determined by the type of worldview they have. So on the planet of Dan, it's a dualistic culture. And so the way I'm kind of structuring it is there's two sides to the culture, some that are very materialistic and some that are more like spiritual based or believe more in things they can't see. And so there's constant conflict there. And depending on what side or what, where the character is in that, it's going to determine how they act and what they say and, what their beliefs are and those kind of things. So it's huge. Worldview is the biggest part of writing. And I think that's a difficult part, I think, for some writers, is that they just go into it with the character, not thinking about the bigger picture. But the big picture really is the most important part. Once you have that nailed down, then you can get into the specifics of who the character is.
Now, so obviously, you, like all three of us, and four, Damien as well, we all share, the same worldview. We all come from a Christian worldview, and not all of our viewers do, and not all of your characters do. As a writer, your different characters should have different worldviews. So when you're writing different characters that have different worldviews, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think to write from a worldview perspective is the most Christian thing you can do, because you have to really put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like, you really have to die to yourself and like try to understand where someone else is coming from. Unfortunately, in our culture today, a lot of times that's not what Christians are associated with. But I think because they tend to be a little bit, how do I want to say, like closed-minded, or they just have a hard time with that. But I think that really is the essence of Christian writing, is to be able to see a character from their perspective that's maybe not your own. And so that's the advantage of these books, is that it's not a Christian comic book. It's just a comic book written by a Christian. And I know we said that before, but the reality is, like, there will be characters that are atheistic, there'll be characters that are naturalistic, there'll be characters that are dualistic. And so in order to write that character well, you have to understand where it's coming from. So when I go to write those things, I'm going to be doing a lot of research in those worldviews, so I can understand how someone would think if they have that perspective, and what their logical conclusions are as they're dealing with situations or whatever. If you don't do that, then the character is going to come off really superficial, and you don't want that. Like, it's easy for me to say, well, an atheist would say, this is going to happen because God doesn't exist. Well, I think it's a little more complex and sophisticated than that. So so it's really.
Yeah, no, I know that we're kind of going off script here, but this is we're going to talk more about worldview later, so I really want to kind of stay here for just a second.
Sure.
When you're doing research for other worldviews, what does that look like? Like, do you just kind of read a bunch of material? Do you have friends that have other worldviews that you kind of them, where they're coming from, so you kind of pull inspiration from that relationship? What does it look like for you?
Just
it's a bunch of
Facebook group.
That's it.
Yeah.
Social media.
Yeah, social media is a good. Yeah.
That's a great representation. Yeah.
No, I think it's kind of like what you said. It's in multiple sources. So obviously you're going to read like some basic primers on that worldview. So for example, with dualism, I haven't done this yet, but my approach will be is to find like a really good, like, maybe college level primer on what dualism is, and what are the different arguments and the different viewpoints. You don't have to like be an expert at it, but you're just kind of looking at what are the main viewpoints of that view. And then, this is where YouTube is very helpful, because you can look up videos on that subject, and then you can also find speakers that take that view. So atheism would probably be the easiest one. I mean, you can definitely find a lot of sources on that, but there's a lot of YouTube videos of atheists and how they think, and in discussion and conversation and all those things. So you're taking into all that into account, and friendships as well. I mean, I have friends with people that are definitely not Christian, and we've had all kinds of conversations. And so it's really interesting to get into their mind and think, okay, why do they hold to these conclusions? And so that's what I want to do with these characters. I want them to be tangible. Like, I want them to be the kind of characters that if you're not a Christian reading this, you would identify with. You would say, okay, yeah, I see where they're coming from. I'm not bashing other worldviews. I want to interact with them and engage with their conclusion. Like, if you're dualistic, well, how does that philosophy work out for you practically? And do the conclusions really work? Are they really true? Do they really fit within that worldview? So I think this book will be a good exploration in philosophy. on many different levels. You don't have to be an expert in philosophy. I'm not an expert in philosophy. I don't have a degree in it or anything like that. I just find it really interesting to have those kind of discussions. So.
Yeah. Don't sell yourself short though. This is probably the most scholarly comic book work I've ever read. Seriously, it's on that level. But so yeah, I think I really like what you said about just how you approach other worldviews, because I think so often, and this isn't just specific to one worldview over another one. I think a lot of people have a worldview, and when they depict other worldviews interacting with theirs, they kind of villainize those worldviews on some level.
It all ends up just being like the red devil with the horns and the tail
Yeah.
and the pitchfork that you find at like the last page of the tract or so. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like this is not a character, you know.
Yeah.
You
really want. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chad. No, go
ahead. I was just going to say, like, you really want to have characters that are appealing, like, you know, even if they're from a different worldview. Like, how awesome would it be if, you know, your favorite character is the atheist, even though you disagree with their position. You're looking at them as a person, and that's once again, as a Christian, that's what you're trying to do anyways. Like, you're trying to see the image of God in people. You're trying to see their value, who they are as a person, whether you agree with them or not, you know. And I think so many times we just come off arguing, and I don't think that's the best approach. I think a worldview approach is the best approach, because you're saying the common ground that we all have is that we all have a worldview. We all have a lens through which we see the world. And so then we have to question, okay, is this the best lens to look through? You know, some lens it's going to make the world look very blurry, and you don't really understand that it's blurry until you see until you put on a different set of lenses. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this book, is just give the reader different lenses to put on and see what they come out with. So
I think that's great. That kind of leads into our next question. So reading The Silence, I noticed that it is definitely, it has a very kind of a prophetic tone to it. And so do you consider The Silence as a somewhat prophetic piece, and how, you know, through that lens, how do you see the future of civilization?
That's a big question. I mean, I'm definitely not qualified to really talk about
from
that,
your perspective, I mean, you know, you've approached these big ideas here very, very well. So I'm just curious, you know, just kind of where that comes from your perspective.
Yeah, I think I would say yes and no, in the sense that as far as it being prophetic, yes and no, because on one side it is based on the overarching biblical narrative. And so, you know, I think it's in the first one, you'll see the movements. There's 4 different movements. And the last movement, the character of the everyman face comes back, and they're resurrected from the dead, and then they find the naturals, and then there's a great battle at the end. And so it all follows the storyline of the Bible. So in that way, it's a bit prophetic, because you know, that's as a Christian what I would say how world history goes. But it's not prophetic in the sense that someone may look at it and say, man, he's coming up with ideas that people haven't thought of yet, or, you know, that they're going to read this in 50 years and say, oh man, can you believe what he was trying to say there? Instead, I think it's more about current worldview, like how we are operating now as a society. And out of that will be some prophetic elements that I'm not intending. So there'll be some things where, you know, if in a story I show, this is not going to work, this society is going to fall apart because of this, or this, you know, that may turn out to be that way. I haven't written all that yet, so I don't know. But so as far as how do I see the future of civilization, I mean, you know, that's an overwhelming question. I think overall society will continue on and be fine. We have this weird kind of apocalyptic worldview in our culture right now, where it's like everything that happens, it's the end of the world. So, like, you know, the new president comes out, oh, this is the end of our country, or like the coronavirus hits and, you know, all of us are going to die, or what, you know, whatever it is, we tend to just take it and blow it out of perspective. Or you think of financial, I've heard so many people saying like another depression is going to hit and it's going to be the end of the West, or, you know, there's all kinds of those things that come out. And even with the major things that have hit our country, we've still survived. And even if the United States eventually goes away, which just like every other civilization eventually will, whether that's in our lifetime or not, I don't know. But there's a bigger picture to the world than just the United States, and so we have a tendency to be a bit narcissistic as a country. And I think that's because we realize we really do have a great country, but we tend to over idealize it as the center of world history that I think we need to be a bit careful about. So
I think it's like prophetic in the way that the movie Idiocracy is prophetic, right? Where all you do is kind of like just turn all the knobs up and expand the timeline, and then you end up at this thing, but it's not like you're saying you didn't have a vision of the future, and your eyes roll back in your head and you write it down, and
wait, you didn't? I'm done. That
but it's one of those things like you're tracking like human nature over the period of your life, and can say like, this is something that I can see happening.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And in that same vein, like you put a really good emphasis on the facade of a utopia, like a forced utopian existence that essentially is not real. And I love that. At least on Issachar, that's the case. And I think that's such an interesting take on the direction of because so many people, they have this utopia in their mind. And it does seem like every time you try to make a utopia happen, when you force it, when you apply, when you use broken means to bring about a perfect world, it's gonna fall apart. And I love how you've played that out in this series so far.
I appreciate that. I mean, that we see that in everyday life, whether it's advertising or politics or whatever. People are always trying to portray whatever solution they found as, maybe not the answer or the thing that will usher in utopia, but they definitely play it up like it's the solution to what we've always been looking for. It's like even recently, and I don't know a ton about the metaverse, but even when you hear all the way it's been described, it's like excuse me, sorry, it's like it's not going to be it'll be different. It may even metaverse, but other inventions help our life and maybe make society better in some sense, on some level. But we often try to put it in that place of, this will fix everything. And with this society, it's the same thing. That they've on Issachar, they've telling everyone, we found the answer to death. We found the answer to pain and suffering, which is what we're all looking for, really. I know we'll get into that question here in a bit, but that's ultimately what we're all looking for. And they're saying that they found it, but in all reality, which we'll find out in the next couple of issues, they haven't. You can't fix that problem.
Well, I think it's how people like romanticize the movie Groundhog Day, right? It's a great movie, right? I like it. It's good. But a lot of people see that and they're like, man, if I just had that many tries to get it right, I would find love. And that's essentially what the draw to extending life is. You're not living the same day over, but you have enough time to try a bunch of times to get something right. And I just think that that's very optimistic. You know what I mean? Like, I know when there's things that I have tried to learn how to do or something, to kind of like go outside my comfort zone or, whatever, trying to figure something out. And it's just like, it never pans out the way you think it's going to, the multiple tries is just going to turn you into a villain. I think, having that infinity, to be able to try to do, I think you're just going to get super mad and like, screw it, I'm just going to start killing people.
Well, honestly, and I've brought this character up before, but I think the most accurate depiction of someone who would actually live a long time, what that looks like, is Dracula. Literally, the dude literally just turns into a monster.
Yeah.
And you know, he's a plague-inducing creature. And now, granted, the cost of his immortality is rather graphic, but you know, it's not. But at the same time, if he had all of this time, he could have somehow figured out how to not live off humans.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do that. He doubles down and just moves all around the world, consuming people.
Yeah.
And you know, and just this lust for power and you know, lives consumes him. And I really think that's what I think you're right on, Jeremy, when you said, you know, that you would just turn into a villain.
Yeah,
I don't think you would get better.
Or
yeah,
you know, on like year 2000, you're just opening up the shades. Like,
yeah,
come on.
Yeah, what's the
I'm
point?
tired. This is so dumb.
Yeah. Like,
Check
what
it
am I
out.
living for? Do the same thing over
Yeah.
and over again. Before we jump
Yeah,
back into
and
another
even if
question,
you,
go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, even if you had the chance to go back, like you're gonna make different mistakes, and so then you're
Yeah.
gonna run into the same thing. Well, I need to do it over again because it's just, yeah, it's definitely not the answer for sure.
Yeah, let's jump into some comments really quick. Braxton, referring to the King Caterpillar guy, is he seems like a
He is a real
charmer.
charmer.
I'm
Yep.
sure he is. Molly Daniel says, now I have White Rabbit in my head. Thank you very much. You are welcome. Braxton says, all right, I want to stick around, but I am working on Pinewood. Yes, get to work, sir. I'm excited. Pinewood is an amazing comic that Braxton is putting together, and I need it. So go work on it. Will not be able to focus on both. Grant Lankard in 5 minutes is launching Beowulf #3. So get ready to go back that for sure. We'll still be here. Go back at 8, come back, and we'll still be talking deep stuff tonight.
You guys should
Carl
say,
Witzman,
like, if you go and come back, you should put that in the comments.
absolutely. Let us know that you backed it. Everybody's saying hi to Grant, and Braxton says, when in research for me, I know that things that work for me is reading up multiple sources as well as asking people who fit in whatever that research might be. That's, I think, the best way to do it. You know, just kind of textual consumption and then interviewing people, getting to know people, living alongside people if you can. Molly says, hi, Grant. Braxton says, I have a story that I'm working on that's a sci-fi story where the main character is a transgender. I'm not trans in the least, but I also don't think I know everything that comes to it. Yeah, I mean, fill in the blank. If you have, anybody that's different than you, you don't know what it's like to be that person firsthand. So you need to get to know people, and really try and figure out where other people are coming from their own perspective. John Renner says, got a jet. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the conversation. If y'all do end up talking about NFTs, Chad, text me. I'll hop back on if you can. Peace. Braxton says, so the research comes into play with looking up things, YouTube, even TikTok. TikTok is actually, it can be a pretty good place to do some research. Reddit, and actually from the source, ask someone or many people that are trans about their life and worldview. That's a great way to learn about any worldview. Grant saying hello to everyone. And Molly says, tacos are done. Catch you next week or when I have another Tuesday off from the evening job. Enjoy your Taco Tuesday, madam. And Xanderman 15 says, sending my love to you boys. Sincerely, Alex.
So sweet.
Indeed. Let's jump in to the next question. So clearly, the depth of the silence is pretty vast in regards to its history and philosophy. We've kind of already discussed some of those things. It could easily be a lengthy novel series like Dune, Lord of the Rings, fill in the blank, Wheel of Time. So you combined prose and the comic book medium. So kind of walk us through that. What made you decide to do that?
There's two main reasons. The first reason is, I love the comic book format. I love the way it can tell a story. But I also love these different forms of like narrative, dialogue, poetry, those, I love what that can add to storytelling. And I felt like in those elements to it, it just gives makes the story a little bit heavier and a little bit serious. And I'm not saying that with a comic book that you can't do that. You can't make a serious story, because there's plenty out there that are very profound and serious using that format. But there's just something about poetry and narrative help that just really add that to a book. And I found myself wanting to tell or give a lot of information about the story, and I just didn't think it would work in a dialogue between two characters. So I felt like by using it helps in prose and that kind of thing, it helps really give the reader a bit more insight into the world. That's the first reason. And then the second reason is more practical. Right now there's literally thousands of indie creators, thousands of indie books out there, and so I wanted to do something that's just slightly different, just kind of put my mark on the indie world by saying, here's a comic book. The difference is it's dealing not just with philosophy, but it has these different types of literature in it, and brings it all together into something that I want people to walk away and say, man, that's a work of art. It's not just there's a comic book that someone can get and that's fine, it has good value, but I want them to be like, man, this is really, this is more than just a commercial thing. This is like, a work of art. So
yeah, and I think for sure, and having like some variety, taking different types of bites. If you think about like Martin Luther took sayings and information and put it to the rhythm and pitch of common songs at the time in order to get points across. So I think that rather than just having to just like churn through an encyclopedia of information, to say it in one of those other styles, be it poetry or whatever, you can kind of help people get a better idea of what's going on.
Yeah
and honestly, I'm gonna go full screen here for just a second. One of the coolest parts of issue 1 is in the middle of the story, and it absolutely goes with the theme. Is it breaks off into a quote from Romeo and Juliet about essentially what's in a name, like what makes, like this whole purpose is this rose is manufactured. So is it actually a rose? Because it's not naturally grown. And I love that, and that fits really well into the message of what this portion of the story is getting into. And I think that's fascinating. The pace of that, though. So like you have like traditional comic book art, and then you break off and you have the poetry, and you have different images, maps and charts and things to kind of help tell the story in not in the same way, obviously, but it reminds me of the graphic novel version of The Crow. About how in the middle of a story he'll switch up art styles, and he'll to tell a specific, to get you to feel something different than what you have felt the page before, and to get a specific point across. Obar does a great job in that way, and I think you do something very similar here in structure, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So anybody have anything else to add on that topic? And we'll move on.
No, I appreciate what you said about the rose, the flower, because that that was an important thing, because I was trying to do a couple different things like you mentioned, and I just felt like that quote was really nice from Shakespeare. It's so familiar, like we've heard it so much, and then to splice that as a picture of what's going on with Dr. Polaris, and he's like really wrestling with his own identity. Like, am I human? Like, how do I call myself? And that's what the kind of thing I'm trying to do is, like, in these little bite-sized snippets, communicate something very profound and deep. Like, so you don't need a philosophy textbook, but it's really saying something like, how do you identify who you are? Like, where does that come from? Especially when we start talking about like artificial intelligence and androids and those things in the future, like it really blurs those lines. And I think you can really do a lot with that. And the other one I think about is that picture of, it's actually right behind my head, right? This one right here in the book, where she's flying over the city and she says, basically, to be blind is to be like God. And, I pose that question because, I wanted people to think about, what does it mean to be like God? And then she's like wrestling with who she is, because she says, if God created this amazing world, why did he create me so broken? People wrestle with that question all the time. So anyways, yeah, I think that's what prose and poetry and narrative bring to comic books, that I'm not saying you can't do with comic book storytelling, but I think it just enhances it.
So we've talked a little bit about Dr. Polaris as a character. And so for everyone who's not familiar with the story, kind of give a brief explanation of who he is, without spoilers or anything, as much as you can, and then tell us what inspired the personality and the character of Dr. Polaris.
Yeah, so Dr. Polaris, you'll see in the first part of book 2, gives an explanation more of his backstory. So it's not, I'm not giving too much of a spoiler here, but it just shows like his rise to power. So he is
this is him right here for all of you.
Yes.
Out there. Yeah.
Yes.
He looks like Mike Rhodes.
Oh my gosh. Why'd you do that to me?
Sorry. That was our youth pastor from when we were kids.
Okay, I was like, who is that? It sounds like a wrestler.
Sounds like, I don't know who that is.
I don't know who this is. Should I know who this is?
As soon as I opened the book the first time, I was like, whoa, that's weird. Yeah. Put it back.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So, so he's now the leader of Issachar. And as you read through the story, you kind of get a sense of this double personality. Like on the surface, he seems really nice, but then you're starting to question, like, is this guy really like it? What are his intentions? And there are some times where his intentions seem really good, and then other times where you could tell, man, this guy might be pretty evil. And I think that's the most interesting characters, the ones that you can't really peg them as being good or bad. They have aspects of both, and you kind of see that in the story. And for him particularly, he's gotten so many enhancements that he's done to himself that now that line between whether he's human or machine is really being blurred, because there's just so much about him. And you see a little bit about that. The one disadvantage I will say of it being black and white is that you don't see his face is really a hologram. It's just a projection. That's all it is. And at some point I may color, not the issue, but I may make a color version of him so people can see that he's more machine than man, but there's still a part of him that's man, obviously. So so that's who he is. And then as far as like personality and character and where all that came from,
do you have like an English teacher that was a hologram?
No. And I say this at the end, like in many ways, this book or the series is kind of an autobiography, because all the characters have a bit of who I am in there. And so someone like a Dr. Polaris, like, I know we joke about being a sociopath and all that, but the reality is we're all human. We're all sinful. We all have that side of it, a darker side to who we are. But we're not fully, most of us at least are not fully given to that. So there's always that constant wrestling between, there are things I want to do that are good that I don't end up doing, and there are things that I shouldn't do that I end up doing. And he's that kind of character. And so so
like in a way, I think last week, I even talked about in memoirs, a lot of the humans are in various spots on a gray scale, morally speaking. And I think that's important when you're depicting characters, is they need to be complex, because people are complex. No person does the right thing all the time. No person. So, you think of like some of the most profound good people in history, like Mother Teresa or Gandhi. You think of these figures that are referenced all the time of being, these great people. Well, Mother Teresa, her views, she gave a lot, but her views also caused a lot of hurt in how she cared for people. and that's not really looked at. Now, was she intentionally doing these things because she was an evil person? No, but because of the way she did some things, she did hurt a lot of people as she was trying to take care of them. So you have that dual, that wrestling that's there, where you have the good and the bad, and it's important to explore both. When you are depicting characters that are well rounded. So I think he is very intriguing so far as a reader. I remember thinking at the end of issue 1, there's something that is revealed in issue 2. I don't want to give it away, where when he says it and it causes such an emotional reaction to Naomi, I felt that too. I was like, oh no, you are a jerk. But then how he explains it, which we'll get into that in a minute. How he explains why he did what he did is I didn't know how to feel after reading that. And I like that. I like that I can't just peg this person immediately, because I think there's absolutely a time and a place for certain characters, depending on who they are, for them to be wholly good or wholly evil. But there should absolutely be an equal or more of a place of people who are neither. They bounce back and forth between the two. So and let's see, jump down here. Lost my place.
Is your computer on the ceiling? That's what it looks like in the perspective of the camera. You're like, I don't know.
What?
No, I think his phone is right above his.
My phone is right here.
Okay.
So that's where my notes are.
I was like, where is your computer? I thought you were trying to type and stuff.
Tippity type. I just have a keyboard I have a keyboard that repels from the ceiling.
Oh, okay.
No.
Nice.
So the theme there's an obvious theme, especially in issue 2, and that is death, which you have talked about in your own personal life on the show many times. And there's straightforward implications about death, and then some ambiguous ideas that seem to come up. One being that death brings us inspiration to seek after the meaning of life and ask questions. So expound upon that a little bit.
Yeah, so that's something I experienced in my own life, because when I was in college, my father passed away, and up to that point, I had not really thought about death. Like, it was just one of those kind of categories that's out there that it happens, but I don't have to really worry about it or whatever. And so to see someone who I think he was a bit younger than I am right now when he died. At that time was shocking to me, and to have to face that, that's the most difficult thing. I think it's either facing the death of someone close or facing your own mortality are those kind of things that really drive you to seek after the meaning of life. Like, what's the point of you being here? Like, well, what are we doing here? And for me, just if I want to be completely transparent, I still wrestle with that question. Like, there are many days where I wrestle with the terror of death, in the sense that even though I'm a Christian and I do have beliefs about life after death and things like that, I'm still human. And so I still wrestle with doubts from time to time. I wrestle with the idea, like, what if I die and all of this was not true, and I die and then that's it? Like, that's a terrifying thought. Or what if I believed what if what I believed was wrong, and I find out some other religion or something, in the real lonely times, everyone, I think, wrestles with those kind of questions. And that's a great equalizer about death. It doesn't matter who you are. It does force you to ask those questions. And if you haven't dealt with it yet, it will hit you like a tidal wave. That's what it did to me. All of a sudden, I'm looking at someone who, with my dad, died as an atheist, didn't believe in God. And so there were so many people that just assumed, oh, he went to heaven, everything's fine. And I'm like, he didn't believe in heaven. Like, he didn't even believe in God. He wouldn't want to go to heaven like that. This doesn't make sense. And so it really caused my life for about 4 or 5 years to go into a spiral, because I just was like, what do you do with that? And so in this issue, in that first section, once again, I've referred to it before, there's a narrative on one page, and then there's a conversation between a mother and her daughter about death in this society. And the girl is like saying to her mom, like, my friend Xavier at school said something about death and how we're not, described it to me that there used to be hospitals and people would be buried in funeral. And the mother's like, let's not talk about that. Like, and the daughter's like, are we getting in trouble? Like she just has this innocence about her. Whereas the mother like knows that, no, we don't talk about that anymore because our society has given us the answer. And if we question that, then we'll get in trouble. But the narrative part is coming from the narrators just talking about like his desire to solve that problem and how death forces us to ask the bigger questions about life. And that's true. I mean, outside this narrative, that's a real issue in people's lives, dealing with the issue of death. You either try to ignore it by entertaining yourself, to oblivion for the rest of your life, or you face it head on, and then you have to go on a very deep search of what that means. Because I'll say one more thing and I'll be done. But like the reality of coming to the end of your life and there not being life after death and you ceasing to exist is terrifying, because all of a sudden everything you've done meant nothing. Like that's where the emptiness of like an atheistic framework is, it's just so apparent. Like you die and you're like, well, why did I live for anything? Like, why didn't I just go and spend my life on my own pleasure? Like, if I'm just going to die and that's it. Or there could be this sentimentality that people will remember me and all that kind of stuff, but that doesn't work when you're faced with cancer or like you're on your last day of life. That is so empty and fleeting. It's easy to argue that position from a place of health than it is when you're faced with death. So death is a very important question, and so I wanted to deal with this issue.
And I think that it's important not only to have this conversation and ask those questions, but I think it's also helpful to continually go back to those sort of questions. I can think growing up, conversations about doubt and things like that with my parents who are Christians, and them basically saying like, but no, this is the truth. Okay, awesome. I get what we're supposed to say, but this is how I'm feeling right now. And, when you're in that, I think it's important to not just like gloss over it. I think it's important each time to explore, like, why am I feeling that way? What exactly am I doubting about my belief system, whether it be God or, whatever. Like we said, the three of us have a Christian worldview, but it's important to ask those questions and think through those things like multiple times. There's going to be another time in your life, Chad, where you're going to be confronted with death. And I think it's important, just as important then, to ask those questions as you did, when your dad passed away.
Oh, that will probably be tomorrow. I'll wrestle with it again.
Yeah. I think Carl brings up a really good point. He says many atheists create their own meaning in life, not worried about what happens after life. And I think it was Stephen Fry who says this. It was either him or Ricky Gervais. I cannot remember. He had a really good response to a Christian who asked, I think it was Stephen Fry, a Christian asked him, well, if you're an atheist, if you don't believe, that morals come from God and that there's no point to life after death, why aren't you raping and pillaging and stealing and living life to the fullest? And he said his response was, I rape all that I want to rape, and that is nothing. I don't want to. And he found me. He said he goes on to say that he finds meaning in what's in front of him and what is around him in the moment. And I thought that was a really profound. I mean, obviously, when in many ways, as a Christian, I would disagree with where his worldview, ends. But it really does. Every interview that I've ever read, I really pay attention to three key atheists on topics like this, because I really want to get my head around, kind of what they think about death and what they think about meaning. And Stephen Fry, Penn Jillette, and Ricky Gervais. Sorry,
Ricky Gervais,
Ricky. Yeah, right.
Randy is his brother.
Those three have really intelligent and thoughtful answers from an atheistic perspective that I have wrestled with in my own life, and that's good. I like that they, even if my worldview disagrees with yours, it's refreshing to know that you believe, why you believe what you believe, even if because I will say this: everyone has faith in something, even if it is that God is not real. You have faith that God is not real. You have faith in an atheistic worldview. So it is in itself its own faith-based worldview, because everything is. I think as a Christian, I believe we were created to be beings of faith, and I think that the tension between brokenness and of sin when it entered the world and creation, and the longing to be unbroken, that tension there, it requires faith from our perspective. So but I think man, this is a hard topic, and talking about what we're about to jump into has been personally something that I have wrestled with a lot in the last few years, especially since the pandemic started. Lots of people that we know and love have passed away, or have really just gone through it with COVID. I mean, just in this community, I mean, we lost Meredith last week. Luke and Randy have learned to walk and talk again. I mean, these are serious, crazy, suffering things. And in this issue, in issue 2 of the Silence, Dr. Polaris reveals that he was testing Naomi, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, and that he did so for a greater purpose that could only be accomplished by doing what he did. So, Chad, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say in your own worldview. Is this a way of explaining, or at least talking about the problem of evil, which, for those who don't know, problem of evil is the tension between if there is a God who is all powerful, all knowing, all loving, why is there still so much suffering and death in the world? So is this a way of you approaching that topic, and God being in control, or gods being in control of things that happen?
Yeah, on one level, it's about Dr. Polaris, because what you're seeing there is someone who legitimately wants to help Naomi, but he knows the only way he can do it is through her suffering. And that's the same kind of thing that happens often as a parent, that there are some things that your children have to go through in order for them. Like the simplest example is going to the dentist, or going to a doctor. They have to go through something that they don't want to, that doesn't feel good, for their greater benefit. The problem with the problem of evil is it is a problem because there are examples of evil which seem senseless, that don't have a connection with a greater on the other end. So for someone in a concentration camp, for example, they're not coming out the other end thinking, oh, I'm just going to read my Bible now every day because of that suffering. Right. Like it's, where I'm just going to be nicer to everyone. Like there's just such a heaviness to that kind of evil that it's almost trite to try and find, oh, what's the silver lining here? What was the greater purpose here? So I don't think it's enough. It's enough to answer that. I will say, however, and from a Christian perspective, a Christian worldview, the problem of evil is ultimately solved in the cross, because in the cross, it's the greatest evil that happens in the history of the world to elicit the greatest good. So in that sense, it does, and that overrides the evil of, the concentration.
And from that perspective, it was God himself who saved that for himself. That the worst thing that could ever happen to anyone happened to him.
Yes. Yeah. And in order to solve the problem, because, if you look at the problem initiated in the garden with our evil, and from that just compounded throughout history in order to overcome that, it's an amazing that the way to put death is the solution to death is to put it to death, in the same way like the solution to evil is to experience the greatest evil in order to defeat it. Like it's such a paradox. The problem is applying that to everyday life, and those examples or experiences of evil that seem senseless. So I think where sometimes as an indictment of Christians, we tend to make it too trite to say, if someone's suffering, well, God will see you through, or, just think on the other end, like God's doing this so you make you a prayer warrior, whatever fill in the blank is. Sometimes you just need to sit there and cry and weep with the person and be in pain with them. I mean, that's why when Jesus, not to make this a big Bible study, but like, when Lazarus dies, Jesus wept. He didn't like I'm just going to come with the answer and here it is. And he resurrects Lazarus, but Lazarus eventually is going to die again. So, we have a tendency to try to answer the problem of evil with a simple solution. It's not that simple. Yeah. It's a problem. It's very difficult. So,
and I think, go ahead.
The only thing I was going to say was like that situation with Dr. Polaris and Naomi. I want to bring that up, and I want the reader to wrestle with it. I'm not giving an answer to that. I'm just evoking the question for them to really get a feel for who this character is.
Yeah, and I really that's really what I wanted to get to, was the fact that you don't answer that question. And in the book, and I think that's important, because there is no answer that we could possibly give that would be satisfactory. And I think, again, not to make this a Bible study, but a place of comfort for me from a Christian perspective, I've mentioned it here before, the Daniel 10 shows kind of a behind the scenes look at what's going on in the unseen realm when Daniel is praying for, a specific thing to happen and nothing happens. And he's like, what and then an angel appears 20 days later and explains, in this moment, in this thing, and you cannot apply this to everything at all, but in this specific situation, he gave the reason why this prayer was not answered, that this thing happened the way that it did. And it was not because God willed it, or God, he doesn't give that answer. He says there was a spiritual adversary that was doing this thing, that was preventing your prayer from being answered right now. And so he had to get relief from another angelic being to then be able to come to him. And it's how that breaks down, we don't know. We don't have the answers to that, but it's a glimpse into this reality from a Christian worldview that you get the feeling, the sense that there is something going on that we don't see, that we don't understand, because we don't have the information. So going back to what you said, Chad, is saying things like, oh, well, it's all a part of God's plan, or, God's doing this for judgment or whatever. Those are not wise things to say to people who are hurting, because first of all,
go ahead. Sorry.
First of all, you don't know that's the case, and second of all, that could be very hurtful for someone who is grieving, or someone who is experiencing a lot of suffering themselves. To say that, it can completely damage their view of who God is, and in a senseless way.
Yeah, that's where I think. You look at like the book of Job, that's where that's very helpful, because that's what his friends were doing to Job. Like while he's suffering, is basically trying to answer the question of the problem of evil, instead of just saying, this is a mystery outside of what I can solve. And so instead, I'm just going to be here with my friend as he suffers, which I think is something that we need to embrace. I mean, yeah, it's like that book and the book of Ecclesiastes for me is like Ecclesiastes for me is like the most profound thing ever written, because it basically just says that apart from God, there is no meaning of life. There's a mystery to what's going on here that you just can't wrap your mind around. And there are some things that you just can't. There's no way.
Yeah.
And people do. And so that's they attempt to, and that's why there's so many different worldviews and philosophies trying to figure these out.
And I don't necessarily want to knock that, because I think, I mean, that's exactly what we're doing right now. You know, we are wrestling with the topic, wrestling with the issue. And I think it's healthy to say, hey, these are possible things that could be in play here, but they still don't solve because the problem, because we don't know at the end of the day. We just don't know. But there are things we can think through and work through that help us process what we're going through a little bit easier.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Carl jumps in and says, even back when I was a Christian, I saw it not as good and evil, but kindness and selfishness. Some people are so selfish that they do things that don't make sense, even things that don't benefit them. And that is true. I mean, a lot of people are, no matter where you stand, what religion you're a part of, what faith you have, it's very obvious. You look out into the world, you look at people, you look at nature, things are broken. Now, how you explain that is where a lot of the differences lie. But we can all agree on this. We can all agree. Look at people, and we're all selfish to varying degrees. Some people much more than others for different reasons. But I do think that's a part of the problem. Is you look out at all of this, you look at people, you look at the selfishness, and even the people who, nobody is 100% selfish all the time. Like, they'll break through. The worst of people can come through and do something kind for someone else.
Yeah.
So, and that goes back to what we were talking about with the varying, gray scale of morality with characters and with people in general. So we'll put a pin in that topic. I think that's something that I might like to revisit eventually. I know with Memoirs of an Angel, I'm about to enter that topic in the series now. So eventually we'll come back to it. I think it's something that's important to kind of bring up every now and again, because it stares us right in the face. And I think it does help to kind of wrestle through it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So to kind of wrap things up, we're not going to be able to get to all the questions, but you have clearly, we've discussed that the theme of this book so far, or of issue 2, was death. So moving forward with issue 3, which I know you said you're working on now, is there a specific theme for that installment? Or does it just kind of expound upon this?
It's more death.
More death and more death. Yes.
Yeah.
Just continued death. No, I'm going to try and do a different theme for each book. And so this new one is going to be about truth and deception, because you start to see the society of Issachar starting to fall apart. There's some holes that are starting to really reveal themselves, specifically with this crash that happens in book 1 and 2. You see the something comes from space and comes down and crashes into the building, and it's obvious to the people that are looking up at it that someone has either died or gotten seriously hurt, and now all of those promises are starting to fall apart. And now Dr. Polaris and his people have to figure out how to control and react to it, and then the people below are starting to figure out, what do I do with this now? So it starts to get very interesting for sure.
Cool. Well, I'm excited about it. Jeremy, you got any closing thoughts?
I'm excited as well.
Awesome. I love those thoughts.
Awesome.
So quickly before we wrap up, I just want to kind of go around the screen here, give you guys a minute to just give your projects and your every time. a shout out. So, Chad, why don't you start us off here, man? Where can we find all of your work?
Yeah, so I'm obviously the creator and author and artist for The Silence, and you can find that at thesilencecomics.com. I also run a freelance art business called The Silence Arts, and that's thesilencearts.com. And yeah, those would be the two main things. And then follow me on Facebook and Instagram, where I'm trying to draw or create something every day of the year this year, and trying to post my journey on that. So that's awesome. Where you'll find me.
Cool, thanks. And Jeremy, you are clearly in your basement where we can follow you.
Yeah. All of my things are down here in the basement, along with me. And yeah, so, you know, if you want to know what I'm doing, then just come over to my house and come down into the basement, and then you will know. No need for social media or Facebook or anything. Just come over. And we'll have fun.
So Jeremy, you make videos for people who have
made videos.
Kickstarter campaigns and such. So if they want your services, how do they get in touch with you?
So you can go to jeremywoodring.com. I've got examples of my work. I'm a photographer and videographer, and I have specialized in the last couple of years in helping comic book creators, indie comic book creators, create videos that'll help them with, you know, Kickstarter campaigns, or to use on social media, things like that. You know, even something as simple as like product photography. You know, just because you're a creative person doesn't mean you necessarily know how to take an engaging photo or make a video that will turn into people clicking on your you know, and supporting or backing your Kickstarter campaign. So that's what I do.
Awesome. And I am Brian Rodman. I am the author and illustrator of Memoirs of an Angel and The Nebulizer and the Princess Warriors on Patreon. And if you want to follow me in all my shenanigans, head to brianrodman.com right here. And all my social media is up top, as well as my Patreon link as well. And yeah, other than that, you can find me at the Dastardly Dingoes YouTube channel, or also on the Rising Tide Network. I am 1/4, sometimes 5th of Comic Book Spectrum, which is every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have a blast. We talk about comics. We review the comics that we have read that week. And this week, I will be continuing my series on the manga that I am reading. And I'm sure the other guys, I'm sure Brian will have a Superman book of some sort, like he always does. And it's going to be a great conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have a blast. We are super inappropriate, and it's a lot of fun. Check us out there. Other than that, guys, it has been a fantastic night. Thank you for joining us in the comments section, and thanks for hanging out with us. I know tonight was a little heavier than normal. But I think sometimes that's good. I mean, art reflects life, and in this situation, art reflects some very deep intellectual thoughts that I think we should not ignore. And so that's what this episode was all about. And thank you, Chad, for letting us grill you with questions. And putting a pause. Yeah, putting a pause on the Hate Chad campaign. And now we will begin again. So screw you. And but no, thank you guys so much for being a part of the discussion. Please subscribe to our channel, hit the like button and the notification bell as well. Just smash that till it's dead. And be sure to join us again every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Next week. Chad, what we got going on? Do we know?
No idea.
I think we're off next week because it's Valentine's.
Are we off next week? Oh, that's right. Yeah. We will not be doing a show next week because it is Valentine's Day. So
Valentine's.
Valentine's.
Monday is Valentine's.
It's some sort of day of love.
But Tuesday is the day of love after Valentine's.
So the day of love after love. We will not be here next Tuesday.
Nailed
But the following Tuesday, we will be back. We'll post on social media to let you guys know what's going on. Thank you all again for joining us. And remember, kids, have fun, be safe, and don't do drugs. But if you do, contemplate on death and then call Chad.
Do good ones.
So thank you all very much. My goodness. Oh, have a good night, everybody. Have a good week. We'll see you later.
See y'all.